When I'm watching the news, what concerns me more than anything is that I don't think they give us anything based on truth. It's all this fabricated construction of what they want us to see.
Has the story of Jesus and the narrative of Jesus been appropriated by Western philosophy and white people?
Absolutely. I think Jesus has been kidnapped by Western thinking when Jesus actually was from the Middle East and more influenced by Eastern thought. And so I actually think I'm returning the message of Jesus to where Jesus brought it from.
Welcome to the Mind Shift Podcast. My name is Erwin McManus, and I'm here with my dad, Erwin Raphael McManus. How are you today?
I'm doing good. I just learned that our podcast last week evoked a great response from people. Since I don't look at comments, I'm completely unaware.
You do look at comments sometimes, but I don't know how you didn't see these comments.
You know, I've been really busy living life.
I'm pulling them up. 1 second. Okay.
So we should respond to some of these comments today, since it seems like it created so much controversy or interest or intrigue.
I don't know about that, but should we name names?
Well, of course, if people send out their information and send their comments and perspectives, then they want to be known. We'll give them their 15 seconds of fame.
You ready for this?
All right.
Okay. What did we talk about on that podcast? We've been delaying the recordings a few weeks, so I'm off.
I'm not even aware of anything.
Oh, I said Harris is a dumpster fire. Okay.
I didn't even know he said anything controversial. But I did get a lot of DMs saying, please talk more about politics. So I thought that was really
don't
interesting.
Listen to those people. Okay, Megan Allison. As someone who attends and tithes at Mosaic with my formerly undocumented immigrant husband, this breaks my heart. It's not as clear cut as you're making it out to be. This may be about your podcast, but unless I'm mistaken, Mosaic was also the church working to support undocumented families being ripped apart during the previous administration's inhumane practices. Lest we forget, we forget they were throwing children in cages. So maybe it's about more than just what you've detailed in this clip, and perhaps we should dig a bit further into the details. I'm going to keep an open mind and try to listen, but if this clip is any reflection of what I'll experience, I'm so sad. The party I vote for is the party that to me may not be perfect, but is the one that best reflects the heart of Christ.
Wow.
I can't.
No, keep
Wait,
going. Come on.
Is it? That's it. That's
okay.
Well, it goes into all the.
First of all, when she's talking about previous administration throwing children in cages, she must be talking about President Obama's administration.
She gets roasted in the comments for that.
Okay,
yeah.
Because everyone who tries to put that on Trump really doesn't have a grasp of history, and so if you're trying to say the Democratic Party is the party that's treated people crossing the border better, you probably should do a little more research. But when the person comments as a person who attends and tithes at Mosaic, first of all, just let me be really, really clear. You do not pay for my silence. And if you go to Mosaic and you tithe, that's wonderful. That's between you and God, by the way. That's not between you and me. You don't tithe to me. You don't tithe for me. You tithe because you have a conviction that as a follower of Jesus, you're supposed to give 10% of your income to the church that you're a part of. That has nothing to do with me. And I just want to be really, really clear on that. Secondly, I'm almost 66 years old. I think I have earned the right to speak my mind. And I'm not 16 and I'm not even 26. I have lived my life and I've earned enough credibility to be known around the world as a thought leader. I'm just going to go ahead and say that. And people are interested in my perspectives on things. And I have perspectives on life, culture, religion, politics, sports, everything. So don't throw that you tie the Mosaic in the direction of trying to tell me what to say. I find that to be incredibly offensive and manipulative. And then if you're going to attack a party, just be honest and attack each party for what they actually did, not what you want to convince people they did. And by the way, I'm an immigrant, first generation. I mean, you're married to an undocumented, I guess, person.
Formerly undocumented person.
Right. Well, I'm an immigrant, first generation. Spanish was my first language. So
you can't even find your documents.
So
I'm kidding.
You're trying to. Honestly, it sounds like the I have a gay friend kind of thing. Like you can attach yourself to someone and say that's why I can have these areas of offense or irritation. I am an immigrant, and I did learn English as my second language. I did learn what it was like to be an outsider coming in, and my perspectives are not the perspectives of a quote, white evangelical centrist.
Wait, you want to get there?
Okay.
Well, there's part 2. Megan comes back. Okay, so Megan, Allison, same person. I'm back. I listened. I'm going to read it without emotion. I'm back. I listened. A couple of things. ... It seems like this uproar is over AB 1955, which is the Gavin Newsom bill that we talked about, which was signed by Newsom. And the point being made on the podcast was that schools can give hormone blockers to children without parental consent. Well, unless I'm missing a huge point, I have read and reread AB 1955, and there's absolutely nothing in the bill about medical treatments or schools providing this treatment to students without parental consent. The bill clearly states that its intention is to prevent schools from the requirement to intentionally out students. The gender-affirming care dialogue is misinformation. You may disagree with the bill, but it was taken out of context. Additionally, finally to my part. Additionally, hearing your pastor's son call a female candidate a dumpster fire on a podcast with your pastor was alarming to say the least, particularly when the opponent is someone who regularly defames women. She's talking about Trump, not me, right?
Yeah, I think Trump.
Okay. Also, anyone on the left saying, well, that the fact that she's comparing me to a billionaire, I'm very grateful. Also, anyone on the left saying why did they miss is wrong. About the Trump assassination potential. Hold on. Also, anyone on the left saying why they miss is wrong. But to say the left is more violent, ? I must have missed all the liberals climbing over the Capitol walls or constructing the noose and looking for the former VP and Nancy Pelosi. You all talked about losing people at Mosaic like it doesn't matter. Is that honestly the truth? Saying things like Communist Party and dumpster fire didn't feel like an open dialogue. I remember when my husband was baptized at Mosaic several years ago, there was a trans person being baptized as well. I can't imagine how they'd feel hearing this.
Oh, there's just so many things to respond to there. But I'm going to start losing my way because it's too long.
It's way too long.
But
she attends, she's been baptized. Her husband's a formerly
I love that.
immigrant.
I think it's great. It has nothing to do with my positions.
I don't care at all.
First of all, the moment someone calls me a pastor like that, you know it's manipulative. And the moment they call you a pastor's son, it's so manipulative. You're not a pastor's son. You're my son.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm Erwin McManus. You're Aaron McManus.
Yeah,
and
I'm also 36.
Yeah. And it's like, just stop trying to use religion to control people and to control what they have to say and what they think. That's just so, it's so last year to try to manipulate people by putting some kind of face on their on your expectations of them. Secondly, to call a woman a dumpster fire is wrong. No, it's not. Maybe you shouldn't call a man a dumpster fire. You shouldn't call anyone a dumpster fire. She said for you to call a woman a dumpster fire. Well, no. It's not about being a woman. And I don't use phrases like dumpster fire, even though I don't think it's necessarily a bad one. And I think it's a fair phrase and hyperbole. But just because she's a woman, that's a part of what frustrates me. Is it's the strategy. If you use a woman of color, you're not allowed to say anything about that person or it's offensive. And the reality is that in politics, you shouldn't even be looking at gender. You shouldn't be looking at color. You should be looking at policies, positions, and competency. And that's a part of the practicality of it is that the strategy, so oftentimes is let's put a person where political correctness protects them from any kind of critique. And I just think that's bogus myself. But there was another statement she made, and I want to go back and
was it in the first section or the second
kind
section?
Of in the middle. And
it talked about, I think a couple interesting things. Yeah. Well, one, the rhetoric of dumpster fire, if it offends you, I'm sorry. But, it was just what I was using to describe Harris and the way she communicates. My response to her was, Megan Allison, hi, son here. Harris is a dumpster fire. Look at her track record and watch her interviews. If the media can turn her into a real candidate in the next few months, it will be a case study of how public relations and how money can truly influence an election. You're right. AB 1955 doesn't talk about hormone blockers. It's worse. It removes a parent's legal right to supervise their child. The government is quite literally prying children from the hands of legal guardians and parents. This is worse than hormone blockers. This is the beginning of California turning into a red state. And as a registered Democrat, I was in college because I was stupid, like most college kids. It is an absolute abhorrent use of power by our already lackluster governor.
That's the point I was trying to get to, and what you said completely covers my thinking.
Oh, well,
I agree 100% that the issue is the shift toward away from parental control of children to governmental control. Oh, and what you said about whatever happened on October.
She's talking about January 6th and people.
Right, January 6th.
Yeah.
And the violence.
And the news with Pelosi.
What's amazing is that you can highlight that day and not highlight the endless violence and rioting throughout the pandemic, destroying cities, destroying stores, destroying private property by people on the left. And that is almost a silent narrative all the way. Of course, what happened at the Capitol was wrong. Of course, it was incredibly offensive, and I'm sure a lot of it was illegal. I mean, some of them, I guess, they were just invited in, and I'm sure some of them didn't do anything illegal, but some of them clearly did things that were illegal and destructive. And threatening to hang Vice President Pence was, of course, offensive and evil. But you're not even bringing up all of the violence and all the rioting and all destruction from the left during the pandemic. How do we get people to be honest and talk about both sides?
I don't know.
It's as if there's like amnesia from the right about anything they do wrong, amnesia on the left for everything they do wrong. And so when you have a conversation, it's almost as if you're in two different time warps, two different histories where nothing happened on the other side at all. And that is it's just confounding to me. And Mosaic is a beautiful expression of the world that I imagine. You know, when she's talking about from Mosaic, I'm like, Mosaic is open to everyone. Mosaic embraces everyone. Mosaic loves everyone. Mosaic invites everyone to be a part of this community. But that doesn't mean that I don't actually have positions on what makes culture better, what makes humanity better. I am so against any expression of socialism seeping into American culture and taking over our political system.
Why is that?
Because anyone who's from another country knows that socialism and communism is one of the most destructive ideologies in the world. You do not find freedom emerging from socialist countries. You do find free countries becoming socialist for a season, but you do not find socialist countries creating freedom. That's the difference.
There's an incredible, I think, is it Sweden? There's an incredible documentary. It's like a mini doc, like 30 minutes online. It might be on Vimeo it was a really great documentary, but it talked about, I think, is it Sweden or Norway? And like the fallacy around this myth that they're socialist, and it talks through the economic downfall of their socialist.
They tried to be socialist
for like 10 years or something, and then they got so deep into it they realized how much debt they were going into, and how, you know, once abundant kind of tax space became this incredibly dependent on the state and government population, and that was drowning their country, and how it's taken them like 3 or 4 times the amount of time that they were actually socialists to get out of a socialist space, and how destructive it was to like their ecosystem and government. I do find it really interesting. Like Megan, Allison, I'm sorry, you're getting the roast today, because
but she had the courage to state her position.
She did. Yeah.
And we do this to create conversation, so it's
absolutely okay. I got another one.
Okay.
From the lawyer, Sean O'Neill.
Oh, he's a lawyer.
Disagree with the framework here. The question, are you a racist, will only ever get a no response. That's different than repeating back to the left what it has already said is a positive thing, i.e., is there more than one gender? A similar way to ask the left a question is already framed in your ep. Are you in favor of harming children? ? They would say no. You could flip this with a policy that the right likes and the left thinks is racist. Are you in favor of expelling illegal immigrants? The political right will say yes. Neither polar side wants to understand the nuance of the other. They may not be capable of it.
Well, you clear out our lawyer because you made everything so complicated. You just missed the simple truth. And
go easy on my guy. I like Sean.
No, I mean, and
no, but rip it apart. We might bleep his name out.
No, I'm just looking at it going, if you ask someone from the KKK or they're a white supremacist, are you a racist? They would say yes. They would say, I believe the white race is supreme, that other races are secondary. And it's, so when you're asking them the question, you can learn how to frame a question. You can go, are you committed to only the white race succeeding? Or do you believe other races are inferior? And they would have no shame in their position because they truly do believe that.
Okay, so it's the point you're making.
The point I'm making, Sean, is that it's not about how you're framing the question to make the other side look bad. Are you creating a straw man about the position you're arguing against, or are you effectively and clearly representing them? Here's the way I ask myself the question. Would I describe someone on the right the way they would describe themselves? Would I describe someone on the left the way they would describe themselves? When they would say to me, Erwin, you have accurately described who I am. You have accurately reflect my values, my beliefs, my perspective. Only then am I able to have an honest debate with that person. Otherwise, I'm debating what I'm saying about them, not debating what they're saying about themselves. And that is my point. You can't really have an honest argument with anyone on the right unless you are communicating who they say they are effectively. You cannot have an honest argument with someone on the left unless you're communicating who they say they are effectively. And that, to me, is treating people with mutual respect.
Okay. Interesting. We'll go back to the comments, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. 1 second. There are 235 comments on here.
So. Wow, that's a lot of you guys.
Matt Betty says, careful, guys. You'll have to exile LA and move the podcast to Austin soon. The way you're going, I'm for it.
Yeah, but Austin is really just California translated into Texas.
Poor guys. The Texans hate us. Yeah. There's so many Nashville. They've got to hate Californians. These places got to hate us.
Well, I mean, we'd be following Tesla and Chevron, is it?
Chevron, yeah.
Yeah, and several others. I know it's crazy, but I chose to be in California. I've always loved California.
We moved from Texas to California.
And part of it is I actually love having conversations with the liberal mind.
Why?
Because on a very a personal level,
sure,
I don't think people who love Jesus and follow Jesus communicate the message of Jesus very effectively to people on the left. I think that they choose the easy conversation with people on the right. And I like having conversations with people that would not normally be in that conversation. So I'd rather be in the minority and have to earn the right to be heard. And because of that, I have to be able to think more clearly. You don't have to think very well if everyone in your world agrees with you. You have to elevate how you think when the majority of people in your life disagree with you.
My response to Maddie Betty, because I got real petty last night. They try to cancel us every year or so, but get bored because we talk about the dumb things we do. I said we talk about our mistakes, apologize when we're wrong, accept we aren't perfect, and we don't pretend to be. And I do think there's a clear distinction. Like we've talking about this because, every once in a while there'll be anonymous emails or just mean stuff people write from fake accounts, or we'll get DMs, or I even got this year is wild. I realized that someone I knew was commenting from a fake profile on YouTube on our podcast, mean things and information that I had shared with them privately. And it doesn't change how they actually fessed up to it. They owned it and they apologized, and they're still my friend. I don't care. But because it is what it is, I was like, hey, you don't have to do that. You can just text me. Be like, hey, I don't like your ideas or your thoughts or your interview. I had my number leaked earlier this year, which is called doxing, when they dox your location or your information. And it was a really mean comment, and it was really sad. And I almost changed my number, but then it was also screw it doesn't really matter. But for a couple hours, I was getting all of these crazy calls and text messages, and it was a whole thing. And it doesn't really matter. But what I'm saying by this is that people try to cancel us, but really and we got an honest email that was like, wait till we send this to Fox News and CNN. And I laughed and was like,
that was just last week.
What are you talking about? You're not sharing anything I haven't talked about on the podcast.
Yeah.
I'm never going to go into intimate details of my like personal life and my mistakes, but I have no problem talking about like the overall subject matter of whatever it may be, because I'm not hiding anything, but there are things that are private. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, you want to go air things out? That's fine. It's more awkward for you than it is for me. I have no shame at this point. I called you and was like, hey, let's do a podcast. Let me like air out everything. I'll talk about my whole life. And I talked about my next book, my first book, my inaugural book. And I came up with the idea for it. But we won't speak of it because we're talking about your book right now.
No, but if we talk about your book, someone will take the title.
I know, so I can't talk about it.
Because it's a really good title.
It talks about shame.
No.
I know. So, but anyways, so I'm talking about this, and this is what I mean. It's like we're not famous enough to cancel. I don't think anyone cares. We're not in that space. I think it's cool when people talk about put us on the same brand shelf as these really large organizations, but then you realize, because we've been inside of a lot of these guys, like their organizations, we're not like them at all. I have a lot of respect for a lot of these guys. We're not similar even at all. They don't even consider us like Christians. I know. Sometimes, half the times.
Yeah, this is funny because one of my friend John Gordon, he was with the pastor, I guess the largest church in the United States.
What church is that?
In
the
South.
Yeah,
and I guess he was speaking at a conference there. And my friend John used to be, a Jewish Buddhist energy coach.
Yeah, everybody knows John Gordon.
Yeah, and so I helped John come to faith. And so he tells this senior pastor, this very famous person, that I led him to a relationship with Jesus. And the guy goes, oh, well, that makes sense because Erwin's really more of a Buddhist. And
you got offended by
that.
And
John said, why would you say that? Like, Erwin loves Jesus. He like believes the Bible. He's like, and so John's like all defending me. But I thought, that's been my life. What's so funny is that—
No, hold on. You got offended because you told me and you were like, that offends me. Or you didn't say that offends me, but you were getting like upset about
he meant it offensively.
No, he didn't. I love John Gordon.
No, not John, the guy.
I know, I'm getting there.
Okay.
I said, I love John Gordon. That's my guy, but my man runs hot. John Gordon runs hot. He runs similar to me. We both run hot. Doesn't take a lot. I think he took it as an offense. But what did that man say that isn't true? You're very Eastern philosophy. I grew up thinking you are very Buddhist. You obviously love Jesus. You believe in the Bible, all these things. People always feel that they have to like Jesus check you. Like, please tell me you believe in the Bible. There's a comment in there that says like, do you believe in Jesus and the Bible? And I
still get those
all the time.
Yeah.
I don't think that pastor in Alabama meant it in a negative way.
Maybe in Birmingham.
I actually think he meant it in a good way. But we're like alien to these guys because I actually really respect him. You respect him. I know. You have nothing bad.
I absolutely respect him because I know he believes in Jesus.
Yes, but it is funny because when I called you out and I said, "What did he say that you haven't said?" And you were like, "Well," I said it a long time ago.
So I can see myself, and I realize I am more of a Buddhist in terms of in the way that people experience me because of—
Go into that because there's a lot of Christians that get real nervous.
Yeah. Because Buddhism is not just a theology; it's a philosophy. Right. And when people think of Buddhism, they think of people who are highly centered, have a deep inner peace, who are reflective and meditative, who try to bring like kindness, and calm to the world. All those things are true about me.
Yes. Like you're very monk-like in that way.
And before I came to Jesus, I would say that the characters that I was very influenced by oftentimes would be people who come from Buddhist backgrounds because they seem to me the ones who found inner peace.
Yes.
I just have happened to find my inner peace through a relationship with Jesus Christ.
Yes.
And, but for some reason, Christians tend to feel a lot more like, gun-toting, I'm going to say camouflage wearing, but I got camouflage pants on today.
Those are my people.
Yeah,
I love those.
And a little more like angry, like to fight kind of people.
Yeah.
And then if you're more ironic, more peaceful, more organic, I tend to think of what we all have in common rather than what separates us, what unites us. Yeah. So I can see that. So yes, I took it as an insult, even though I wouldn't normally think of it as an insult. I think of it as a compliment.
That's why I said who it was, because I want this person to hear that I'm calling you out on that. Because I don't think he meant it as a mean thing at all. I think he just was like matter of fact, being like, oh yeah, Erwin's more like that.
And because I communicate the message of Jesus from the context that I think Jesus actually is best understood, which is a more Middle Eastern philosophy than a Western Enlightenment-oriented philosophy. See, I think Jesus has been kidnapped by Western thinking when Jesus actually was from the Middle East and more influenced by Eastern thought. And so I actually think I'm returning the message of Jesus to where Jesus brought it from.
Well, that's a great conversation. Has the story of Jesus and the narrative of Jesus been appropriated by Western philosophy and white people?
Absolutely.
But here's the unique thing. I love this clip. There's this really, who's the old guy on TikTok? I want to talk about two things, because just real quick on a caveat, if you're looking for a great book to read within the Buddhist mindset, I have a therapist, and we can talk about this. I have this amazing therapist I've been seeing for the last, July, 10 months or so now. And it's been incredibly helpful for me and my mental health as someone who's had ups and downs and good and bad moments in life. I've really just taken the last 10 months and just, even when it was hard or expensive, just committed to therapy. I think I've only missed one session. She thought I died. She was she's like, you've literally never I think I've moved one session, never canceled the session. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I got a new phone and the iCal didn't update. I didn't realize till after she'd called me. But she's not a Christian. And I'm curious to hear your perspective on this, because she's Jewish, Israeli, probably more Buddhist, very mystical, but we don't really so much talk about religion on that space. But she gives me a lot of Jungian, gives me a lot of this book is a book called When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron, who's a Buddhist monk, but psychologist, and she's going through this crazy moment, and she talks a lot about inner peace and talks about how to deal with the outside effects of life and chaos, and how to control your inner world. And for me, it's been really interesting. It's been a really unique journey, because I'm if I need a Christian perspective, one, I have a great community at Mosaic. I have a great community with you, with my friends Eric Roy, Matt Pagan, Austin St. John. I have amazing people in my world and life. I also have John Gordon. I have amazing mentors that are older than me, Edwin Oriagave. I have great friends, Nico Van Slyke. I have great people that are Christians. It's nice every once in a while to have a different perspective that goes, okay, you can't just pray this away. You know what I mean? Prayer is an important part of my life. It actually is. Yeah. And fasting is an important part of my life. You can't just pray this away. You're gonna have to just look at yourself, and you're gonna have to look at yourself and the broken pieces, and I'm gonna help you draw a map with some spaces to put the broken pieces in. And for me, it's been really helpful, because her immediate response isn't God has you or you can do it because Christ strengthens you. It's and maybe this is heretical. It's hey, there's this psychological study that was done in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s that actually matches this. There's a modality that you can apply to this situation and really assess internally what's going on inside you. How do you feel about that? Because for me, I think it's actually made my faith stronger.
Yeah. Well,
but some people might be afraid of that.
Yeah. I think that all truth is God's truth. And so no matter what discipline you use to get there, when you get to truth, it's true. And sometimes
you're gonna get flamed for this statement. You gotta walk this out a little bit.
Yeah, I will. So sometimes you can use, quote, the right filter, which is the Bible for me, and come with the wrong conclusion. Let me give you an example. When children had epilepsy, they thought they were demon possessed. Because they were using, quote, their biblical filter to try to explain a human phenomenon. It took medicine and science to discover that there is a condition called epilepsy. Yeah. And that it wasn't a demon, it was a condition. And then you can actually then address epilepsy through medication and other treatments, while there are probably still places that they think it's still a demon.
Okay.
And that's what I'm going, so what's more valid? The filter that hides the truth from you because you can't see things clearly, or the filter that gets you to that truth, even though it wasn't the filter you trust?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I know that's very controversial to say, except that it's just real life. And so And, medicine is progressive too. I mean, it's medicine that used to use leeches to bleed you, It's medicine that would cut you open thinking that disease could be removed from your body by letting blood pour out of you. It's medicine that did frontal lobotomies. It's medicine that used electrical shock treatment. And so you can't always say medicine is right. Medicine is progressive, and many times the things that medicine or science concluded were completely wrong. So it's really the pursuit of truth. And the Bible can be used to hide truth and to blind you from truth. It's really the intent that you're using the scriptures to try to get to truth. You're using science to get to truth. You're using medicine to get to truth. It's the pursuit of truth that matters to me. And so when you're in therapy, to me, everything that Freud ever said was pretty much invalidated. It's like it's completely discredited. But he began a pursuit trying to understand what motivates human thinking, human choices, human brokenness. Jung, Adler,
Did I say
others.
Freud? Sorry.
No,
Meant
you
Jung.
said Jung.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm just because he's the father of modern psychiatry, right?
Yeah.
And so you could discount everything he says, but then you go, it's the exploration of trying to understand what's going on inside of us that's really important. I actually think the Bible has more to say about what happens inside of a human being than any psychological filter. But I think that a therapist can actually access a lot of different ways of helping their client come to incredible self-awareness. And if you come to self-awareness, you can find healing. And, so that journey can come a lot of different ways. Sometimes self-awareness comes by sitting there having a conversation with someone that because you're safe to finally open yourself up and listen to yourself. Sometimes self-awareness comes through a relationship, a trauma where you finally, it's enough pain where you see what's really going on.
Yeah.
We can get to that place a lot of different ways. Sometimes self-awareness comes because you're reading the Bible and you're reading about Joshua or Moses, and you suddenly, it's like God just reveals who you are to you through that person in the scriptures. And you see that moment, you realize, oh, that's me. And God brings that incredible healing. But I always think, from my framework, whenever you move to healing, it's always God. The journey may be different. The process may be different. You may be climbing a mountain in Tibet or walking across a desert, in Africa, or sitting in a chair at a worship service. But when God speaks to you, he speaks to you.
Yeah. No, I agree with everything you're saying. I think the unique thing, I was reading When Things Fall Apart, that book, and I read the first chapter like 3 or 4 times when she recommended it, my therapist. One thing that's interesting is she talks more than I do. And that's also why I like it, because I didn't want to just go somewhere and talk more. To some degree, podcasting is therapy. Like we get to, there's subjects we would love to talk about that we don't talk about because, one, we don't want to give, we don't have to talk about everything negative that happens in life or hard in our life. And I wish, and we struggle with that, I think, sometimes, because I think, there's stuff that's going on in our life right now that we've talked about going, we should do a pod about this. I wish we could talk about.
I wish we could talk about everything.
I do. I wish we could.
But we can't.
But why can't we?
Because there are battles not worth fighting. And for some people, a small battle would cost us the big war.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of battles we go, let's not fight that one.
Well, yeah.
It doesn't take us where we want to take the world. We want to make the world a better place.
But I do think, this is where I come from. Like, I think Hillsong's greatest miss in all of this, like Carl Lentz and Brian Houston and all about all this stuff. They've had controversy forever. Like, Google them. They've been having controversy for 50 years. The biggest miss was that they didn't all jump on a podcast and go, look, this is where we made all the mistakes. Like, this is where I stopped listening. Hey, look, this is, Carl Lentz. Like, I wish he had, people were like applauded him for doing nothing for 4 years. I'm like, brother, like, no, I wish he had mapped it out. Today I was a dirtbag. Today I cheated on my wife. Today I allegedly did. Today I read that there were lies. You know what I think? I wish that he had like vlogged the whole thing. That's selfish. Maybe it's because we have a voyeuristic reality now. I'm using Carl Lentz as a specific, because I also know we're good and like we've texted and life's good. And he's also doing podcasts. So I'm not airing him out.
And you never mentioned him until now he's doing his podcast.
Yeah. I've always kept that in a safe box because he's someone I cared about. He's had a lot of influence in my life. Good influence. But when I'm saying like him, I'm like, dang, the only issue is I really wish he had like just let us all in, and also like he did what was best for him and his family, and like now they're strong. But like with Brian, I'm like, man, I wish we like even us, like I wish all the bad stuff that happens we could talk about it, to
Mhm.
go, this is my opinion, this is how I think we should do it, this is how we're going to do it better, or this is how I'm going to do it better, or like, hey, I'm sorry here.
Yeah.
Because I do think the world holds each other in this like weird, like, what is it, like the Chinese finger traps? Remember when you used to put your fingers in?
Yeah,
You pull, the more you pull and try to get away from
Yeah.
the chaos, the more like you're stuck and locked
Mhm.
into the chaos.
Yeah.
And so I do see the benefit of like a Carl or Brian or even an us or whatever. Not, I'm not putting something in the same pool. I'm just talking about unique people who are in somewhat public figure that have private moments. It's like where I do see the wisdom is like removing yourself creates a lot of quiet in your own life. And sometimes you just need that. Space is a good thing.
Mhm.
And then I'm like, sometimes I just wish that we were writing like user manuals to everything. Like, man, what not to do, how to not leave a church, how to not break up in a relationship. Like, you know, just like the good and the bad things. But even if I bring that back to politics, because I really wish there was more trust and transparency with candidates. I wish there was more trust and transparency when passing bills, when you cannot look at a Pelosi and go, she is a transparent and trustworthy figure. You can't do that with Trump. He's more transparent, but he's probably not a trustworthy figure. You know, I was into a pod this last week, that CIA agent that's on all these podcasts, Andrew Bustamante, who's like, he was asked by Stephen Bartlett on Diary of a CEO, and he said, who's the best candidate for the U.S. in establishing world dominance again? And he goes, neither.
Mhm.
They're both bad.
Mhm.
But let me tell you which kind of bad.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, it's probably a healthier way of looking at this. So we look at all these things, and it's how we compare. It's what we allow ourselves to talk about, and then how willing are we to like seek wisdom, to allow ourselves to learn from our mistakes, and to allow other people to admit they're wrong, so that they can get healthier.
Yeah, and ironically, I mean, I feel this tension because one of the things that I feel very is very important to me is helping people see Jesus in a new and beautiful way. But I also feel a deep sense of you call it calling to help people think more clearly, and which is in some ways almost like separate. And I've always let one take precedent over the other. But and because of that, I've been very, very careful throughout my life about just not talking about a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
But I do find myself getting more and more concerned when we lose the battle of language as a culture. Like I can't escape the text from that person when they started talking about gender care. And
the comment?
Yeah, her comment was,
talking about the bill,
the bill, that it's about gender care. I'm like, it's not about gender care.
What they're saying is that it's about not outing the kids to their parents.
Right. See, the phrase gender care is a manipulation of mental frameworks, because gender care should be making sure that your child grows up with a healthy sense of gender identity as male and female, boy and girl. The shift is children should be exploring and discovering what gender they are and the multiplicity of different genders, as if gender care is only executed when a child becomes uncertain about their gender. And so suddenly things like gender mutilation, gender blockers, the movement toward this ideology that it's normal for 5-year-old girls to think they're boys, or 5-year-old boys to think they're girls, and for us to affirm that and create a safe, quote, space for that. That's not gender care. And politically, what happens politically is that phrases are chosen that hold a mental framework, and we don't realize that we bought into it. Even just the whole thing of pro-choice, pro-life, or women's reproductive rights. And we choose language, securing the border, the wall. I mean, Trump was really good at creating concrete frames that hold a whole ideology. I'm building a wall. If he were if he were a more complex person, he should actually say, we're going to create a healthy way for immigrants to come into this country, and to make sure that the wrong immigrants do not come into this country. Yeah, but now we're not even allowed to say that there are right and wrong people to let into this country. And I'm from El Salvador, and it was very hard for me to get my American citizenship because we were not a preferred nation. And
I always find it wildly hypocritical to be so pro-life, but then to be so anti-immigration. When if we're saying that, and I know that they're not directly connected, but bear with me for maybe a stretch.
Yeah.
We care so much about human life, and yet we ignore it once it's born and trying to get into our country, versus looking at human life and going, I believe human life is incredibly valuable. The greatest resource we have is each other.
Yeah.
Right? The greatest gift we have is each other. Our greatest responsibility is to look after each other.
Yeah.
Is the golden rule to love each other.
Yes.
To treat each other well, right? And we fail every day. We all do as in society. But to not look at the border as the greatest resource. Like, what is the biggest issue here? That people see what we have and they want to be a part of it. Is that not the greatest gift?
It's the greatest compliment a country can ever have.
Absolutely. I'm not a pro-war person, but I am an anti-drugs person. And I am like if half of the north of Mexico wants to immigrate because of what's happening, and like, Guatemala, El Salvador, not so much, why don't we create spaces to go train, educate, empower, embolden, and grow them as a resource? Because there's so much that Americans don't want to do. And yet there's incredible people who want to come and be a part of our society.
Yeah. The one place Trump is 100% wrong.
Okay.
Almost made me, not almost, made me angry.
99.9%. Okay.
Is when he talked about the success of Bukele in El Salvador is because he's sending all those criminals and gang members across our borders back to the United States.
It felt like he missed.
Somebody told him that, and it's
that was
completely non-factual.
But it was very factual 10, 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
The opposite was the fact that
the
United States sent all those criminals to El Salvador.
Yes, in like the early 2000s,
and,
yes.
And at the same time passing international law that you can't prosecute children for crimes that you can prosecute adults for. And all these gang members were 14, 15, 16 years old that they were recruiting. So now El Salvador becomes the most dangerous, violent nation in the world. It's the other way around. Bukele did not transform El Salvador by sending criminals to the United States. He built prisons, and there are 70,000 criminals in those prisons in El Salvador. So somewhere along the way, Trump is being given some really terrible information, or he's just talking about things he doesn't know anything about. And to make a point about being anti-immigration, I am pro-immigration. I am against open borders. Because being from another country, I understand the dynamic of that. And by the way, most immigrants that I interview are against open borders.
That's the craziest.
That's why I think it's very confusing. It's normally white people who are suburban, who are for open borders in places that are in the Midwest and the North because they're not affected by those borders. People who actually came here legally or came here and worked through the process documentation, they don't want open borders because they understand the dynamics of that. And even like today, we open up this podcast, we watch Japan's stock market economy collapse. We watch the stock market collapse. We watch inflation going out of control.
Collapse or take a big hit. It took a big hit.
Huge hit.
Yeah.
And I'm watching yesterday CNN, and I think it was MSNBC talking about how this is really not a problem. Inflation is really great. We don't have anything to worry about. And I'm going.
Well, Dems say we have the greatest economy America's had.
And I'm going, look, we just need to look. If you think Kamala Harris has the right economic policies to take us out of a rapidly coming inflation and economic catastrophe, then you should vote for her. If you think Donald Trump can do that, you should vote for him. That's not the only issue, obviously. But you have to look at these things. Honestly, when I'm watching the news and I'm listening to the media, what concerns me more than anything is that I don't think they give us anything based on truth. It's all this fabricated construction of what they want us to see about each person. And that makes me nervous. I mean, I have to tell you, when I started watching this political cycle, I thought, let's see how fast in 100 days can social media and corporate media construct an image of a candidate that is so unpopular that when the election comes, she wins because they created a persona that's so attractive that she wins an election. That to me is an amazing study of branding, marketing, and social reconstruction. The one thing I do know about Trump is the media hates him. And if he wins, it won't be because you see the pretty side of Trump. I'm going to say this, and he always calls people stupid, but I'm like, he's too stupid to not burn himself.
Yeah, Trump's greatest enemy is Trump.
Yeah, he just, if he had just given a speech where he was creating vision, or if he would just stop bashing Kamala Harris's ethnicity, if he would just stop saying mean, bullying, cruel things about people, he could be so easily an attractive candidate. So if you vote for Trump, you're voting for an unfiltered, horrible image of a human being. But if you vote for Kamala, you're voting for a very filtered, very constructed image of human being. And that's, to me, where we're at.
Okay, well, with that said, this is my least favorite time of the decade.
But if we don't talk about this, are we even relevant?
Nah, sometimes I just wish we were like an equestrian podcast. Well, look at the horse.
There'd always be a horse you hated.
It's jumping. It landed. I like politics. I like talking a little bit about it. I don't understand everything. I like giving my commentary on things. I do understand that nothing has made me more of a conservative than living in California, experiencing how absolutely absurd the way Los Angeles is run under two horrific mayors. What happened to that guy? What happened to
Garcetti?
What happened to him?
He just disappeared.
They put him in a bunker. They put him with wherever George W. hid during September 11th. Like that man has been gone.
Yeah,
I don't hear anything about him. They're doing the same thing to him that they're doing to Harris. That they did to Harris. They just put him in a bunker, lock him up, and then after 4 years, when someone gets old, they bring him out and they're like, "Look at Garcetti. He was the greatest."
They create a new public persona, an image of that person.
Different public persona. That man was hated in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And who is his replacement? What is her name?
Karen Bass.
She's terrible too. No one talks about her. That's the interesting thing. She's pretty irrelevant in Los Angeles.
But because you have to be super, aware of the political, cultural ramifications of that.
What is that?
I mean, California and LA is so liberal that whenever something goes badly, the solution is let's become more liberal.
Yeah.
And then when that goes badly, the actual conviction is, we need to even be more liberal. There's a basic framework here that if something doesn't work, we didn't become liberal enough.
Yeah.
This city doesn't work on a pendulum like the United States does. If being conservative doesn't work, the United States tends to pendulum. Let's be a little more liberal. If being liberal doesn't work, we pendulum. Let's try to be a little more conservative. Historically, we've kind of pendulumed. California doesn't really.
But California was it red under Reagan?
It was under Reagan, but he was a Democrat who switched red. You're right in that era, but that was a very small window,
fluke, right?
Yeah, of time.
Yeah.
And but LA and San Francisco and other cities, we only pendulum left to left to left to left.
Yeah.
And what's so ironic is I'm a person who would love to be a liberal.
Yeah.
I mean, if I were just really honest, I would just love to be a liberal, and my brain doesn't allow me to. And
because
some of it
because it turns on, or
because the way my brain works is I work through future implications. I look at the outcomes of things.
Okay.
And I look and go, if I take this policy or this position to its extreme, what will the world look like? And I can't help it. I think that way. And I know what the world looks like if we go further and further and further to the left. And that's, to me, really, really sad. And I know what the world looks like in my mind if it goes further and further and further and further to the right. And,
is it as sad?
Yeah, it's sad too. That's why we need intelligence.
Yeah.
And that's why our podcast offends people, because there are a lot of people on the right who just get angry at things I say, and people on the left get angry at things I say. And that's when I know I'm at least fighting for an intelligent middle. May not be right, may not be the better answer, but at least I'm trying to fight for an intelligent response to a better future.
So how do you feel about people who are saying, vote for RFK then? Don't vote for Trump. Just vote for RFK. Don't vote for Harris. Vote for RFK.
I like RFK. He just can't finish a sentence.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't know what a sentence is. He only knows what a paragraph is. And you can't win an election if you can't say things succinctly.
Yeah.
Even if he wasn't independent, you have to learn how to speak in bytes, unless you have a machine clipping your random, incoherent thoughts into bytes.
And you're referring to Biden and Harris. I can't tell who's worse, Biden who can't remember things or Harris who doesn't know things. I'm not sure which one's worse.
Yeah. That to me is another, I know we've gone a long time, but see, talk about things that concern me.
It's fine.
Like,
I know the guy who runs the podcast.
Yeah. The media was completely oblivious to President Biden's mental condition or lack of capacity to run or lead. But the moment they realized he was going to lose, the entire media within 24 hours turned against him. And even when he kept saying, he answered the question, he's running. He answered the question, he's running. They kept saying, oh, well, when you answer the question, or when you finally decide, he kept saying, I decided, I'm running. I'm running for president. I won. 14 million people voted for me. Yeah, but when you answer the question, when you finally decide, and I realized instantly, oh, he's not going to get to run.
No,
because the entire machine moved against him.
But they did that to Bernie Sanders. Remember, he kept smoking Hillary Clinton.
Oh, he should have been president. There's no question in my mind.
He should have been president?
Yes.
He should have been the nomination.
He should have been the nominee.
But I don't care. I don't think he should have been president.
No, I'm not saying that I would have liked him as president.
Okay.
I'm saying he would have won.
You think he would have beat Trump?
Yes. I think if Bernie Sanders had been selected by the Democratic Party, he would have been president of the United States. You know why?
Why?
He tells you the truth of what he actually thinks.
He does.
You may completely disagree with him, but Bernie Sanders tells you the truth.
Yeah.
And, and if you believe in a socialist ideology, if you believe in his view of the world, it's compelling. And a lot of people will vote for someone based on their trustworthiness to their principles and policies. And so I think he's more likable than Donald Trump, even though they're unlikable different people.
They're kind of the same.
At that time, I think Bernie had a little more.
He had the juice.
He had the juice. Like
he had that riz.
I think Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party picked him because they thought he would be so far left that Hillary would look centrist.
Yeah.
And they thought he would be unattractive to America, but it would position her to look like the middle. And he ended up being so much more attractive than her that they had to leverage things to make sure he didn't win. They controlled the Democratic nomination. Yeah. And I think they devastated the political process for the Democratic Party at that time.
I mean, we are entering an era where a woman is running, Harris is running, a candidate is running. It has nothing to do with her being a woman. Where Harris is running because they chose her. There was no due process. There was no, where they go to the conventions and they do it the right way, the way it's always kind of been done, where they nominate someone and they hear and they listen and then they debate and then they appoint someone. They choose someone. They bypassed all of that. I hope, and I really wish, because I don't know that a new party, a third party, is ever going to have as much overall power and pull as the DNC and the RNC. But I do hope that this is a unique moment where people on the left are realizing that even their own opinion and posturing doesn't matter. That the party will do whatever it wants, whenever it wants, and that they will swing a little bit more right. Because the right could use a little bit more open-mindedness.
Yeah.
And I think if they can absorb these people who feel wronged, or these electoral candidate representatives that feel wronged by the fact the DNC is completely putting their weight behind someone who I don't think she can win, but it will be really interesting to see if she does. If Harris wins, it's not a conspiracy, but we have watched one of the most interesting PR and marketing stunts and power moves in the history, maybe of the United States, maybe history of the world, because she had no effectiveness and had no popularity, and now is polling higher than the opposition or than by her predecessor. Like, it does not make sense to me how this is happening.
What's interesting to me is, at least from my perspective, the Democratic political machine is more powerful than the individual, even when they're President Biden.
Right.
But Donald Trump proved himself to be more powerful than the Republican political machine.
Yeah, they couldn't get rid of him.
Yeah, and that the Republican political machine is broken because they did not want Donald Trump. He just ended up being more powerful than the entire Republican machine. The Democratic machine proved to be more powerful than their leader, President Biden, because they told him his time was up and he was removed, even though he wanted to remain the candidate. And so the system is broken, and maybe in my lifetime something will emerge. But even if Kamala Harris was the best candidate for the Democratic Party, the shift in process may have a permanent effect on the democratic system. And
do you think there is a reality or potential reality that the DNC collapses?
I don't think it collapses, but I do think it becomes America's institutional party by the next election. And the Republican Party, whatever emerges, because right now it's in complete disarray. Like, once Donald Trump can't run again, maybe the best thing for him winning is he can't run again.
Yeah, maybe.
And, but because I wouldn't be surprised with him if he somehow,
finagles his way out into a third term.
Elon Musk creates a pill that makes you young. Donald Trump runs again, but the Republican Party desperately needs a future where Trump isn't influencing, controlling the party, because he's bigger than the party. And maybe that's where the third party emerges, that the Democratic machine becomes so much of a machine that no one can really emerge out of it. And you have to be a complete insider. And the Republican machine is so broken that no one emerges from within it. And, and then you have people like Robert Kennedy Jr., who maybe if he was 30 years younger would be incredibly compelling. And I do like him. I don't dislike him at all. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I think he's really interesting. I don't dislike him. I just don't think he's never going to win. That's just not a real thing.
No, but there are no candidates to me that are compelling.
Do you think he hurts Trump more than he hurts Harris by running and staying in the race?
If he stays in the race, well, interestingly enough, I thought he would have hurt Biden more than Trump, but I'm not sure if he hurts Harris more than Trump.
Yeah.
So I don't know yet about that. I do think he would have hurt Biden, but I think now he may actually hurt Trump. I'm not sure.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Well, we've been going on for what seems like forever. I actually don't know. Austin usually sends me okay. So we've been going on for like 55 minutes.
Okay.
So let's call it.
Let's call it a day.
Let's call it a day.
Hey, if I said something to offend you, if you're on the right or the left,
you're welcome.
just take it as fodder for your creative thinking, and it doesn't.
You're allowed. Also, it's like, sit there. It's okay if you got the shakes right now. It's okay you're a little red. It's okay if you're like having to woo-saw a little bit. Meditate, pray. You got this. You're gonna be okay. Just go to the Mosaic podcast and listen to a message.
Yeah, if you don't want to hear my political views, you don't want to hear my cultural views, you don't want to hear my analysis of life in the world, just listen to the Mosaic podcast, because there I'm just opening up the Bible. And I'm talking about Jesus and how to live your life. And
you don't talk about politics at all.
I don't talk about politics at all, because it's not my space there.
Yeah.
And I've always treated that space as a sacred space. It's really, I respect. And I don't bring my opinions there. I bring what I understand to be truth. And here I'm bringing my opinions.
And we're not saying any of this is true. We're just having fun. So
I don't know.
Yeah.
If I'm right, I give myself the permission to fully disagree.
My
with myself.
intended purpose for this is that I hope you find something in here interesting and interesting enough to bring this up with your friends or your wife or your boyfriend or girlfriend or like whatever. And I do this sometimes with my friends. I'm like, 5 minutes of politics. Let's talk about politics for 5 minutes. Whether you care about it or not, you have to have an opinion. And I think it's so important to have a worldview, to have a perspective, to have an opinion. I remember in my 20s, I asked you, what's like the most important thing for me to do? And you said, figure out what your perspective and your worldview is and have one and care about it and research the opposition or the other side and become knowledgeable about things. I can't say that I am knowledgeable about things, but I can say I have an opinion. And I'm exercising that and I'm learning things and I'm reserving the right to say that I'm wrong and to change my opinion. And it's okay to do that. You don't, just because you say you're one thing now doesn't mean you have to like stick to that forever. You can go, hey, look, I learned something new. And it actually swayed me to a new idea. So guys, rate and review this podcast. If you don't have something nice to say, don't say it.
Or disagree with respect.
Yes, give us 5 stars and then disagree with us. We love you guys. Rate and review this. Subscribe to our YouTube. Rate and review and follow Spotify and Apple Podcasts and wherever you're listening to podcasts. We really appreciate it. And also go and pre-order pre-order our brand new book. I say ours because it's ours. The 7 Frequencies of Communication by Erwin McManus. The Hidden Language of Human Connection. I cannot wait for this to come out. September 10th. We are flying to Chicago tomorrow. This episode will release in a few weeks, but we're flying to Chicago tomorrow, and you're going to speak at the Global Leadership Summit.
That's
and
right.
we are going to pick up the special edition that we made for Global Leadership.
I'm so excited.
So I'm very, 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 very excited about this. And the assessment drops on September 10th. You want a discount on the book and the assessment, the bundle, you can go to the pre-order right now, erwinmcmanus.com, 7frequencies.com, and you can buy the bundle, get 50% off the assessment that releases with the book.
Yep, September 10th, the assessment doubles in price.
Yes.
And it's still really inexpensive.
We love you. Besitos para llevar. We'll see you later. See
Have
you
a great
next
week.